Turns out he's a major cinephile. They don't watch enough movies! It's a very simple formula! And here we go. Hello, Halloween homies. It's a frightening Friday, and I don't want to scare you too much, but in this episode about this amazing block of programming, 31 Nights of Halloween on Freeform, you already missed one night, including your first chance to watch Hocus Pocus. Ah! But seriously, it is the start of October, and 'tis the season for our family-friendly Freeform Halloween marathon. Unless you have been living under a rock, like Patrick Star under the sea, you have at least heard of this, especially as it relates to Hocus Pocus. Well, I wanted to take this episode to learn a bit more about how this became a thing, highlight some of the staple, air quote, scary flicks, and dive into this year's lineup. So let's get into the Halloween season and get you all caught up on the family-friendly festive fare and get you ready for the other 30 days of this monsterful marathon, because you do not want to miss the lineup tonight. So how did this get started? Let's dive into the historical archives. So 31 Nights of Halloween has previously been known as 13 Days of Halloween and 13 Nights of Halloween. It used to start on October 19th and obviously aired on ABC Family in 2002 and 2004 to 2015. Most of you probably knew that, but did you know that it used to have a home on Fox Family from 1998 to 2001? This has since been put on the rebranded Freeform channel and now lasts the entire month, leading to 31 days and nights of creepy, kooky content. This was created based on the success of the probably much more renowned 25 Days of Christmas, which started 2 years prior. Now more than 20 years old, since 2018, this block has aired for the full 31 days, and that first one had a ton of fun, including the 25th anniversary special of marathon darling Hocus Pocus, as well as network premieres of Maleficent, Warm Bodies, and one of my favorite dark musical adaptations, Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. So we're going to talk some staples of the franchise, and you know where we're starting. I know, you know, we all know. It's the best one. Hocus Pocus, the true gem, the one film you have to watch once this month. Otherwise, did you even do Halloween? Duh. This film is just about as old as I am, and when Walt Disney released it, it was not well received, having mixed to negative reviews primarily. I know, it sounds crazy. But because of 31 Nights of Halloween, this film has flown as if on a broomstick to the top of the cult classics list. I think of this movie as the equivalent of once a year watching Elf. Probably that level of importance in that same category. But before we talk on the movie, there is a sequel being developed for Disney Plus by Adam Shankman, one of the judges from So You Think You Can Dance. I know he's done more. That's what I know him from. Which I really want to be good. But I am probably about 72% confident it'll be a good seasonal rewatch. But I will say it now, impossible to overcome the original. But how many sequels do? I mean, I feel like Frozen 2 did, but that's just my opinion. So this movie is the perfect amount of dated once it gets to the modern time. And before we go on, the cat guy's name is Thackeray with a T, not Zachary. It is a weird name. It makes no sense why they chose it. But it is what it is. Say it proud, capital T. Let's say it together. 1, 2, 3, Thackeray. Thackeray Binks. So the plot, witches messed stuff up in Salem back in the day, and maybe they will come back. We get to the modern era, and I loved when to show people are from California because they're wearing tie-dye. That's the big symbol. I mean, I love wearing tie-dye. I own many things tie-dye. If you see me on TikTok, you know I'm a big tie-dye guy. But seeing this when it was, guys, probably the most groundbreaking thing ever. It should have won the Oscar for Best Costume Design. Sorry, Age of Innocence, not even close. This is also one of the few movies that either makes you realize that all virgins are idiots or to trust local superstitions. You can take the message from either of these ways, however you want to take the direction you go. I mean, let's pretend it's the local superstition one. Just think of Friday the 13th. If people keep dying at this camp or near this camp and like every few years, maybe it's best to stop going there? When living in a place that has a history with witches, maybe don't go amucking about their old lodgings? Dang it, Max. There's also an amazing musical number to I Put a Spell on You. I can't find her, the real movie singing version anywhere. Spotify, iTunes, I could rip it from YouTube, but then you have the talking. You wish there was a MP3 release somewhere that has this, because that would be a hit on the Halloween party playlist, especially that version. There's a ton of amazing running jokes like Amok. Yabos is something that you never would expect in a Disney movie nowadays, but those two are things that I think if you're any Hocus Pocus fan will relate to those two jokes more than anything else. And this is the kind of cheesy Halloween movie we all need to calm us down after watching something actually scary, like The Shining, Candyman, or Get Out. Think AMC Fear Fest for that, and then come relax with Freeform's 31 Nights of Halloween. So there's only one movie that truly transcends both Halloween and Christmas. Yeah, I watched during both holiday seasons, obviously, and this is The Nightmare Before Christmas. So I talked about this film earlier in our Disney Music Movies That Slap episode, and this one definitely still does. Like I said in that episode, this movie is more of an animated musical with a crazy amount of amazing songs. What's This is my favorite, the most Christmas of all the songs, but This is Halloween, Oogie Boogie song, the town meeting song are all amazing. Really, the only one that's kind of annoying, especially out of the context of the movie, is Kidnap the Santa Claus. I don't know if it's just the kids' voices are a little grating, especially when you're not watching it and have that reference for it. But overall, this soundtrack is great for carpool karaoke long drives. Let's say you're driving home for a winter break, or I don't know, you're not trick-or-treating, so maybe you're just going on a spooky drive. Maybe this is the music for you, because you can only listen to the Ghostbusters theme song, Rock Lobster, Purple People Eater, and the Monster Mash for so many times. If you look at just a story, pretend that we're not talking about music for a second, it's actually a really nice, deep story about finding yourself, defying the expectations that others put on you, and honoring the choices you want to make. Yeah, that might be too deep, and the moral kind of makes it seem like Jack Skellington should have stayed in his lane, but I feel like I'm going to project all the positive messages and takeaways on this movie when watching it, and you should too. And also, just throwing this out there, in a time when all Disney animations were 2D, this movie came out 2 years prior to Toy Story, so this was sort of a new idea of a style of animation that inspired what we look at today. So you all know about Casper the Friendly Ghost, but do you know about the 1995 movie Casper? It's one of those movies, for me, that I remember watching in the optometrist for some reason. Honestly, the biggest question that's already answered is, how does this animation style look at the CGI? It is a dated movie, which doesn't always have a good track record, but the ghost animations in this are still pretty good. I actually didn't remember just how dark this movie's plot was, talking about death and its relation to the storyline and the plot, but it is a staple family fun movie, not unlike Haunted Mansion. And at the end of the day, the family has tragedy, moves to a spooky house, haunted by some troublemaking ghosts and one friendly one. Honestly, the ghosts kind of remind me of the gargoyles from Hunchback of Notre Dame, and one of the greatest parts is the Ghostbusters cameo with Dan Aykroyd as Ray Stantz, which does make this canon in the shared Ghostbusters universe. I know we didn't talk a whole lot about it overall. It's a fine movie. Is it the best? No, but it's fine. If you can find it, it puts you in the mood, and it's family friendly for sure. So, there's one movie that I saw when I looked at their graphic they put out of all the movies coming out, and seeing Scream 1 and 2 on this, oh my gosh, I was super excited. So if it is not known yet from that alone, I love these movies. Maybe too much, but as I look at my Ghostface mask mounted on my wall until I get my Funko Pop version of it, I mean, look, if someone on the listener side wants to get me it, I would love that. That would be a fun gift to add to my studio space. But enough about me asking for things. Back to my first foray in this franchise. That's what I think about. Way back in 2015 in Ohio by myself, hoping I was not going to be too scared of this movie. Looking back, this is nothing. It is a slasher, sure, but it's so quirky and fun, and the way it plays with tropes of the genre, it's super, super unique and endearing. And I think I've said it before, this is a great way to dip your toe into the slasher genre. Maybe that's why I have such fond memories of it. I won't make this whole episode about the franchise. I will save that for a different episode. maybe when we get closer to Scream 5 coming out, which is coming out and has a lot of fun returners, as well as Jack Quaid. And like when the Neve Campbell announcement came, we knew Courtney Cox and Dave Arquette were going to be back, but when Neve Campbell announced she was coming back, I knew it was good. We're in good hands. But yeah, back to who's in this. Courtney Cox, I guess she was in Friends, but I know her from Scream. Neve Campbell, David Arquette. They're the main trifecta, the big three of the first 4 films, and they're all coming back for the upcoming sequel. I was honestly surprised that these films were going to be a part of this marathon, being that it's always a bit more family-friendly oriented, but it's only one night, and they're amazing and should be viewed. The first film is a bit more of the classic high school setting, which is probably the scariest of the 4, and does feature Henry Winkler. The sequel does take the cast to college and has Jerry O'Connell doing an amazing musical number that I sing way too much to. I think I love you. Isn't that what love is made for? I'm so afraid you get the gist. The supporting cast is super strong in these, and I will make my last point to move on to other things. Great way to dip your toe into this genre. If you don't want to immediately go to the 80s slasher fare or Halloween, Friday the 13th, things of that nature, the marathon does feature only 1 and 2. Scream 3 and 4 are not available during this marathon, but 1 to 3 are all available surprisingly on Tubi, which is a free streaming platform. You would have to rent Scream 4 on Amazon Prime as of now, even though Netflix normally does have these at some point, so keep an eye out. Not that Scream 4 is the best, but it does have some known younger actors in the slasher Scream Queens type genre, so it's not the end of the world if you want to take a dive into the 4th. So Halloweentown, probably the next most festive, fun film foursome under Hocus Pocus. But this is a 4-film franchise, and some of them are just frightening, and not in a good way. Halloweentown, the original, is the best one. It has some of those Harry Potter things about a child learning have this magical skill set part of them that has been hidden away from them, and now they're going to a magical place, kind of a fish out of water in a new exciting magical world. And some of the costumes are a bit cheesy. They just threw a pumpkin head or a whatever head on someone else. It's a creature, it's a critter. It's like trying to come up with a bunch of the aliens in Star Wars. You just have to come up with something and make a bunch of unique characters. But overall, it's a really fun family movie that has all 3 kids, their mom, their eccentric grandma, who is a mix of like Professor Trelawney, Professor McGonagall, and like Betty White. It's a perfect trifecta. I know lots of Harry Potter references in this blurb. Debbie Reynolds is amazing as the more eccentric Aggie Cromwell, who's the grandma, and while Kimberly Brown is great as our lead in Marnie, Debbie Reynolds for me steals the show. And the first movie is about Halloweentown, some scary controversy going on, and there's a semi-predictable villain. But either way, it's a great, isolated, family, fun Halloween movie, and has all the charm and seasonal viewing that you want. The sequel still has the charm of the first one. It's a bit more whatever with the conflict that is kind of similar to the first movie. The villain is way more predictable here, and they start to take family members out of it a bit. There's less of the younger sister Sophie, who is always teased as being important and like maybe the strongest magician in the family, but nothing ever really amounts to it. And the gray spell is intimidating as a point of conflict of making everyone basic and boring, but really it's a bit of a boring tale compared to the first movie. The good news is the charm of the first movie is still on display. The plot and conflict are just a little bit weaker. It's still good, just not as good as the first film in the franchise. Now, 3 and 4 are not on this network, but both are, and the entire franchise is available on Disney+. Now, this is important. You do not need to watch either. The second one ends with a cliffhanger that never gets addressed. The third one has less charm. They don't really care about Sophie in any of these. They barely care about the mom character, Gwen. The plot is kind of interesting, and they have a Knights old group that is hunting magical creatures, and it's like a Halloweentown exchange program with like high school, and they found a way to fit Lucas Grabeel into it. But the charm is just a little bit lacking, especially if you're marathoning it. You can see these going downhill a bit as they go. The fourth one is garbage. I may have tweeted this to a fellow podcast, The Good, the Bad, and the Watchable. The Magic College setting should be cool, but there are some ancient storyline time travel thing that's been done before, and they take out Aggie almost completely. The most heinous of all, though, is the main character is replaced and doesn't feel like the same character at all. You can do all 3 if you want, but skip 4. Skip it. It's like getting Raisinets on trick-or-treating. It's just useless. Don't need it. It's something strange in your neighborhood. Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! Yeah, baby, Ghostbusters 1 and 2. How could we not talk about this amazing franchise? The quintessential 80s films. Who would have thought a supernatural comedy about nerdy guys hunting ghosts in New York City would have made 2 movies in the 80s, be relaunched in 2016, and have a sequel to the first 2 films come out in 2021. I will primarily focus on the original films and just listen to this group of actors. Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, Ernie Hudson, Sigourney Weaver, Rick Moranis. That's right, Rick Moranis from Little Shop of Horror. There's great music in that. And in the sequel that we're getting in 2021, we'll be getting some Paul Rudd. So pretty exciting stuff. Yes, the first movie is better, but if you like the first one, you will like the second one. The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is iconic, Rick Moranis is always iconic, and the comedians just play off each other so well. I really hope the 2021 film is as amazing as I think it will be. The right amount of comedy and special effects, but keeping that nostalgia and the core of the franchise intact. And also, super important, the song is amazing, one of the top 2 Halloween songs of all time. I did see the 2016 relaunch, and it's not awful, but it's also not amazing. And this franchise can have something that is just okay. Just like the Hobbit movies. Ugh, I get sick just thinking about how they made 3 of those out of 1 book. That'll be another rant for later, but disgusting. The 3rd Ghostbusters film will be available during this marathon October 24th at 11 p.m., and you can definitely watch it if you haven't yet. I think my main issue is it's not really a continuation. I love my long run stories and continuing narratives, and having an isolated story in the same genre and logo usage, it's just a tough sell. The actors do the best they can, but they need that OG Ghostbusters group to pass the torch in some way, not just ignoring it completely. And that's why I am super excited and optimistic for Afterlife, because the original cast is in it and they're gonna pass the franchise off to the new group of Ghostbusters, hopefully. So Sleepy Hollow is one of those films that I remember having seen it maybe twice in my life. And I remember not hating it, but not loving it either. It's rated a 7.3 on IMDb, and my stance on IMDb is anything over a 6.8 is considered above average. It does have an Academy Award to its name. It was nominated for 2 more. I don't have a ton to say on it. It reminds me a bit of the Guy Ritchie Sherlock movies and Sweeney Todd. I don't remember Ichabod Crane being a detective, but he pretty much is a flirty detective dealing with a supernatural tree in a rural area. I just rewatched the trailer, and it still looks good enough. I was going to talk about missing Edward Scissorhands in this marathon, but I think with Tim Burton and Johnny Depp already covered with Sweeney Todd, Nightmare Before Christmas, and this movie, there are some good scares in the family-friendly genre of this movie, but it's not bad at all. And I would say this may be close, a little past family friendly, a little stronger. So if you are the younger kids, maybe don't watch it if you don't trust the scares being too much for you. So speaking of things on the spookier side, I would say The Mummy 1 and 2 are probably more on that spookier side compared to some of the other fare on this Freeform marathon, and it's airing during this event. I still see this as a slightly scarier version of Indiana Jones. Brendan Fraser is super charismatic and great in the lead, and Rachel Weisz and John Hannah round out that trio, and there's a reason the 3rd movie is so bad. Well, maybe there's many reasons, but one of them has to be replacing Rachel Weisz. The CGI is super strong for the time of the first movie, and they're in Egypt, the gun-toting American cowboys, the villain portrayed by Arnold Vosloo, he's super menacing, and for a movie that feels pretty light, the scary moments of when Imhotep is stalking his prey, it's actually kind of scary. Also, not a huge bug warning, but the scarab scenes are not for everyone. You know, I was in California in 2013, and the ride at Universal for this movie had a moment with the sounds, and it hits you with compressed air, and it makes you jump. And watching the movie, it's a whole feel if you watch it and have that feel. The second one is pretty good at times, but the overtly CGI Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is painfully bad. Think like 2003 Hulk CGI. It's inexcusable for how good of an actor The Rock is. This was a travesty. It stinks because otherwise the sequel is pretty good. But if you want your Halloween fair to be a bit more of the historical fiction settings, there's nothing better. The third is brutal and nothing of importance happens. The reboot in 2017 has some good actors. I love Russell Crowe. Second favorite actor of all time. I quite like Jake Johnson in this role as well. It's not too bad, but it's also not amazing. Also, it's a little bit annoying because I like my full universe of stories, but the Universal's Dark Universe is seemingly essentially over with Dracula Untold. I can't quite figure out if it's part of it. Invisible Man was pretty successful, but felt like a standalone. And I did want to see what Russell Crowe was going to do with the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde character, and see what Tom Cruise was going to do post the end of this film. So now we're going to talk some omissions. There's so many movies to boot. And actually, I thought of a new one when writing this list. So we'll get there eventually. But here are some of the movies or specials that I think could have either enhanced this because they've never been included or were included at a point and aren't anymore. So The Black Cauldron is one of those Disney classics that's never really talked about or shown these days. I definitely didn't see it as a kid. I saw it much later in life, and it has middling reviews, but when I did finally get to watch it, years after graduating college, I was mostly happy with it. It's a darker story, to be sure. But heck, sometimes Fantasia is pretty scary, and I love that movie. As a child, I love that movie. But it's a great, high fantasy story with that classic quality Disney animation. It may not be for everyone, especially if you're looking for that feel-good Disney movie. This is not that. It's rated PG after all. But honestly, you should really give it a try, and I would love to see this film get that second life on this marathon, like Hocus Pocus did all those years ago. So we'll do a little rhetorical question here. Are the two live-action Scooby-Doo films cinematic masterpieces that belong on the AFI Top 100 list? I don't think so, but you can be the judge of that. Seriously though, they are, no matter what anyone else says, a fun time. They are not the OG animated show, but they are really fun and timeless in that same cheesy kind of horror but early 2000s way. And they are way more coherent and charming than whatever happened in 2020. That version, the trailers alone made it look like a absolute mess of a story and weird animation style. Absolutely not. But going back to the basics with the fun, cheesy Scooby-Doo duology, it just makes sense to me. It could easily be a double feature night that would be totally on brand with the 31 Nights, and it has Sarah Michelle Gellar, Matthew Lillard from Screen 1 and 2 for keen viewers who know that little Easter egg, and Freddie Prinze Jr., the voice of Kanan Jarrus from the criminally underrated Star Wars Rebels. It all just feels too perfect an opportunity to miss out on. And if you want to throw in some of those animated movies, I remember the Zombie Island, the Cyber Chase ones, but you could put a ton of those out and make a whole 24-hour Scooby-Doo day out of it. Skip that 2020 nonsense. And look, the movies, the animated ones are a little different. They're no Mr. Jenkins wearing the mask. The monsters are more real in the movies somehow, but they're good. Anything in that early Scooby-Doo animated world is good. I mean, look, I don't want to say you should put TV episodes on here, but as much Scooby-Doo as possible would make this better. But you know what we said? Just like this year, forget about the 2020. Forget about the 2020 Scooby-Doo. Garbage. Pretend it didn't happen. I mean, try to. The Haunted Mansion omission is the one to me that probably stings, where the others feel like they're new ideas and maybe never were a part of this. This movie used to be a part of this franchise, and it feels like a no-brainer. It is available on Disney+, so you can definitely check it out there instead, and it should definitely be watched here. Eddie Murphy is at his best in this really fun, family-friendly Halloween movie. It's about this family in a spooky mansion without ever really being scary. Terrence Stamp from Superman 1 and 2, the original General Zod before Michael Shannon took over in 2013. I think of this in the same family as those Scooby-Doo movies, but maybe a smidge better, actually. There are not many movies that can be in the family-friendly but still feel like true Halloween films, and this has to be considered right in that family of Halloweentown, like that whole franchise, easily. It's not as good as that movie franchise. Well, maybe the fourth one, because as we said, the fourth one's pretty rubbish. But not all holiday movies have to be amazing. Look, the Hallmark Channel pumps out a ton of holiday movies that are, say it with me, bad. So this movie, they actually put effort into it, and it's not that bad. This movie can just be watched to put you in the mood. I may be in the minority here because reviews are pretty bad for this, but I did rewatch it before this episode recorded, maybe 2 days before, and it's not as bad as the reviews say. Give it a try if you're looking for something a little different, if you've overwatched Hocus Pocus and the first Halloweentown, Nightmare Before Christmas. So I thought of one movie to add to this list while talking about Rick Moranis, but I've actually thought about two. So the two that I thought about are Dr. Horrible Sing-Along with Neil Patrick Harris and Nathan Fillion, and Little Shop of Horrors with Rick Moranis and Steve Martin. And I don't know, you could call Dr. Horrible Sing-Along could be more superhero-y. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because he's like a mad scientist, if it's kind of cutesy with the musical stuff. They're both kind of in that world. I mean, I think a little more of Little Shop of Horrors, but I think you could easily put these two in the same thing. Could double dip and put them in a marathon to have a fun, lighter musical style fare. And Dr. Horrible's Sing-Along, I just wanted to bring it up, but I really want to talk about Little Shop of Horrors because really, it's amazing music. The da-do, do-do-do. Like, the songs are just so good. It's about an evil plant. And I mean, we don't get to see Rick Moranis a lot anymore. And you know, you could look that up why that is on the internet. It's, you know, I did a little bit of research on Rick Moranis, and you really got to respect the hell out of him. And so seeing him, when you do get a chance to see him in things in the more classic genres, like he's great in the Ghostbusters movies, and he's really great in Little Shop of Horrors. And it's a different kind of movie for the Halloween genre. And I mean, it's a fun musical. And, you know, and Steve Martin even is, like, they all have great songs, and Steve Martin is, like, singing a song about being a, you know, sadistic dentist. Like, I am your dentist. Like, all the musical in that movie is so good. And if we're going to have Nightmare Before Christmas, why not have Little Shop of Horrors? Just throwing it out there. But the last one I want to talk about, it's normally a part of the 25 Days of Christmas marathon nowadays, but the Harry Potter films are available and can be watched when there's winter, when there's fall. They are very seasonal shown, especially in the first one, so they can be considered Christmas or Halloween movies. They are not holiday films to a T, but they're watchable all the time, and if you see a movie that has seasons, you can kind of call it a holiday movie. I know I'm a little contradictory there, but I think it's not an elf Christmas movie, but it's watchable because you see the seasons. I mean, look, Iron Man 3 has a lot of snow scenes in it, and it takes place during Christmas. Is it a Christmas movie? Probably not, but it feels Christmas-ish. The Die Hard debate, I'm sure, rolls on and on and on, and I'm sure we'll talk about that when we get to holiday movies in that world later. The early movies, I would say, are the best at showing the seasons, but remember to watch out for the scary spider scene in the Chamber of Secrets. Be ready to pull out your remote. Hopefully you're watching it in a way that you can skip chapters and not digitally. And you press that scene skip, that chapter skip button. Once Ron says a line about following the spiders, you'll see some little ones, but that's not too bad considering the scarier part, obviously, on the way. You've been warned. Bug alert. Stamp it. So I wanted to give a few just quick points on a few of these things that are a part of the franchise. I get why you have to include Monsters, Inc. as a franchise. I have not seen the sequel. I'm sure you can make the ties to Halloween with monsters and all that. It's pretty easy. But with how many other things there are, and they could include, and this one and these two movies are on there, it irks me a little bit. I have not seen the first one in ages, so I will try to make some time to see it just to get a refresher at some point. And I've never seen Monsters University, and I will make a note to see it at some point. I just, compared to the more Halloween specific things, this feels like, do you really need it? Also, we did mention the Emmy episode and the adult animated episode that even though I do not like The Simpsons, the Treehouse of Horror specials are the show at its best. There's a lot of fun movie references, and if you're gonna watch these, if you're a fan of The Simpsons overall, unlike me, this is a nice way to watch them and the show at its best. I've been asking you a lot of questions this episode, and what do you guys think? I'm going to put another hypothetical about the Rocky Horror Picture Show being included in this marathon. I will admit, I have never seen it, but I feel like it would fit into the mood of a Halloween-centric film. They would not need to show this 7 times, but maybe once in a prime time slot in the later block would be nice. I mean, Tim Curry, Susan Sarandon are both great, and there's some phenomenal music with science fiction double feature, Damn It Janet, and obviously, Let's Do the Time Warp Again, like that, right? Top 5 Halloween party songs. I don't know if you guys are keeping track, but it's a pretty good length of Halloween music I'm giving you. So get your Spotify party playlist ready to go. So let's get you ready now for the present day. You're getting ready. Maybe you missed night 1, but night 2 is very shortly coming up. 31 Nights of Halloween 2020. What do you guys need to know? How many times can you watch something? Here it is. Here's the moment that you're looking for. So get your pens, jot down your notes, mark your TV guides, make stickies on your iPhone, whatever you got to do. Here's the info you need to know to have the best time with 31 Nights of Halloween this year. We are going to primarily focus on the evening viewings. There's some day films in here, but I imagine a fair amount of our listeners are either working or in school and not having all day to get the true 31 days binge experience. Hocus Pocus, it's available 8 times during prime time. With trick-or-treating and cauldron of jungle juice parties in jeopardy, maybe it's best to spend the big night, the big 3-1, starting at 9:20 p.m. with Hocus Pocus. Grab your Kit Kat, Reese's, maybe an adult beverage of choice, sink into your couch, and just wait. Just wait until December 1st to do it all over again for 25 days of Christmas. You got 3 Nightmare Before Christmas airtimes to pick between. I personally think if you're going to rewatch this in December, don't go too late, but don't go too early either. Thankfully, you can get your viewing in on October 19th at 9:20 p.m. Some of these get a bit easier as not having too many options. You want the Ghostbusters 1 and 2 marathon? You gotta tune in October 20th starting at 5:30. And your workday at 5 p.m. hard this day, and turn on Freeform. You want to get that Brendan Fraser fix with your 2 mummy films? The first 2 only. You're gonna have to take an off day. Thursday, October 22nd at 2:35 p.m. This is a brutal time slot, and the sequel can be caught at the end of the workday at 5:45. But the OG film is better and has way better CGI. You have the info. I can't write you a excusal from work day. I can't help you get out of your online Zoom geometry class. You do what you have to do with the information I have provided. The spiritual successor in my mind to everything that makes Hocus Pocus so much fun, Halloweentown 1 and 2 kick off at 9:55 p.m. on October 17th, and it will keep you going into the early morning of the 18th. The last can't miss of these 2 film treats is the earliest of these, and it's Scream 1 and 2, October 15th, starting at 3:30 p.m. The last can't miss of these 2 film treats is the earliest of these, and it is Scream 1 and 2, the double feature that you also need to take at least a half day to get off. Thursday, October 15th, starting at 3:30 p.m. The sequel kicks off at 6 p.m. flat. If you want your Ghostface kill, this is what you gotta do. Or remember, Tubi gets you 1 to 3. And just to kick it off, if you miss the first airing of Hocus Pocus yesterday, relax. You can kick off the festivities with Hocus Pocus on the 4th of October at 9:20. So don't worry. Yeah, you missed it before, but you'll get caught up now. Hocus Pocus, front end, back end, caps the franchise, the marathon beautifully. This also has nothing to do with 31 Nights of Halloween or Freeform at all. But like social question for the week, Have people seen the Hubie Halloween trailer yet, coming out on Netflix in 5 days? Like, the cast has some big names, especially my fourth favorite actor, Steve Buscemi. You guys are really getting the list here. Look, we all know this is the Uncut Gems snub revenge film, but like, it might be so bad it's good. That's my hope, at least. And I will definitely be watching it sometime next week, and will probably be able to report for next week's episode. I kind of liked his recent Netflix film murder mystery, so like, this won't be a good movie, but it might be a really fun, entertaining film, and once again, sometimes that's what you need in your seasonal films. That's it, folks. Another episode in the Book of Spells. Get it? Like Hocus Pocus? Any hoodles, we are just kicking off the Halloween festivities on this podcast for the month of October. While I could make the next 4 episodes slasher-centric, I made the personal decision to myself to mix things up a bit and spread the genre fare out a tad. But don't worry, we will be talking the big 2 with Halloween and Friday the 13th, so stay tuned for both of those this month. What are you most excited for on 31 Nights of Halloween on this magical Freeform marathon? Or what spooky flicks are you dying to see this month? Let us know on social, either KnickKnackIC or Knick-Knack Movies. Remember, we are available on a ton of podcast streaming platforms, including Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, and so many more. As always, thank you to our podcast host, Buzzsprout, and until next time, cinephiles, ooh. Are you not entertained? I think this is gonna be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. I don't like goodbyes. Let's just call this see you later, alligator.